The moments when Eunwoo greeted the audience that night became a momentum that even the most hardened soldiers could not afford to forget. It all started right after the last song. Eunwoo's breath was still breathless, his shoulders heaving rapidly due to the intense dance he had just performed. Yet his smile did not disappear for a second. Cheers from the soldiers echoed, so loud as to match the sound of marching bands that usually fill the barracks grounds. Even some senior officers seemed to pretend to write something on the clipboard just to cover up their equally shocked reactions. The light of the makeshift lamp hanging from the iron pole trembled in the night wind, radiating right into Eunwoo's face. The reflection of the light made her clear eyes look shiny, as if the simple stage had turned into a grand stage of Mama Awards class. It was in this second that Eunwoo stood up straight, holding the microphone with both hands. A small gesture that showed how warmly and sincerely he was preparing to speak. He first the audience. The soldiers shouted incessantly. Some called his name, some teased with shouts like, "Handsome Hyung," "Eunwoo," "Sarangi," until there was a loud voice from behind that shouted, "Can't you stop being too handsome?" Instantly, the whole barracks burst into laughter. Eunwoo lowered his head with a chuckle, his face flushed slightly, but that moment actually made everything even more boisterous. He raised his hand, signaling for the audience to calm down, but the soldiers grew louder. That was the first time a military soldier had made such a commotion at a concert in a place that was supposed to be full of discipline. It took almost 20 seconds for their voices to subside. The 21st second, Eunwoo finally raised the microphone, and his soft voice sounded clear even though the speaker was not very good. "Annyeonghaseyo, Cha Eunwoo imnida." Just a simple sentence, but the whole audience immediately thundered again. Still, he waited patiently. His smile never changed, full of sincerity, full of tenderness. The smile that had only been seen through the screen was finally in front of the eyes of the soldiers who had not touched the outside world for months. After everything calmed down a bit, Eunwoo said, "I'm honestly really nervous tonight." The cheers immediately came again, though quickly subsided as they wanted to hear what he had to say next. "This is my first time performing in military boots," he continued, glancing at his heavy combat boots. "I was afraid of moving wrong, afraid of falling, but it turned out that all of you even encouraged me." The soldiers laughed as Eunwoo lifted his boots slightly, showing how hard it was to dance. Even a vanguard soldier exclaimed, "But you're still cool. Have you ever been ugly?" Eunwoo laughed loudly this time, not Idol's formal laugh, but the sincere laugh of a friend in the barracks room. He covered his face with his hands because he was too embarrassed. After a few seconds, he calmed down. He continued in a slightly quieter, softer, more emotional voice. "Thank you, really thank you for listening to me tonight. We're all here fighting, and I know the days are long sometimes, but tonight, lo and behold, we can laugh together." Several soldiers who were near the stage were caught on internal cameras nodding slowly. Someone swallowed. Some closed their eyes for a moment. Some suddenly rubbed their noses because their eyes were hot. Eunwoo watched them with his empathetic eyes. "You may not realize it, but during my training, during my adaptation here, all of you have been a great strength for me." He paused for a moment, holding something in his throat. "I am also human. I had a rough day too. But every time I see you guys working hard, I think, I'm not alone." The atmosphere was suddenly quiet. The night wind blew, bringing with it a uniform sound of rubbing. Even the speaker, who had been slightly buzzing, suddenly went silent as if honoring the moment. Then Eunwoo lifted his face and looked at the entire audience. "So tonight, I want to say one thing." He held his breath, and so did the entire barracks. "We are here together. We went through it together, and none of us are alone." Some of the soldiers fell down. Others bit their lips. One or two of them were breathing heavily. But before the atmosphere got too emotional, Eunwoo smiled brightly, a smile that turned the heavy air warm again. "And to those of you who shouted, 'Hyung is too handsome,'" he said as he pointed towards the crowd. Cheers immediately resounded. "I can't promise to be less handsome, but I promise to be your friend here." The mood immediately broke out. Cheers turned into laughter. then long applause that sounded all the way to the administration building. The other soldiers who had previously been on duty in the far back of the barracks even ran a little just to see what was happening. Eunwoo leaned in. Not a bit, not formal, but a full 90-degree bow, a bow in honor of one human being to another human being. He still wanted to talk, but when he opened his mouth, a funny thing happened. A soldier in the middle row suddenly shouted as loudly as possible, "Hyung, please say hello to me. Today is my birthday." The whole barracks burst into laughter. Eunwoo spontaneously held his breath, tilted his head, then laughed out loud as if he had just heard the funniest thing that day. He raised his hand as he pointed to the origin of the voice. "Birthday? Seriously?" "Nay," shouted the soldier, waving his arms like a fan at a concert. Without hesitation, Eunwoo raised the microphone and said in a soft voice, "Senjul Chukahi, may you always be healthy and in good spirits." The soldier's reaction was unexpected. He immediately threw himself to the ground shouting, "I can die peacefully." Everyone shrieked with laughter, until Eunwoo himself held onto his waist for being too loud. That second became one of the most viral parts when the video footage leaked. Cha Eunwoo greeted the birthday soldier and made the entire barracks hysterical. After the laughter died down, Eunwoo calmed down again and said, "Thank you for making me feel at home. Although we are all far from family, tonight I feel we are like family too." Quiet for a moment. Beautiful silence. Silence that feels warm. Then, in a voice slightly shaken by emotion, Eunwoo added, "Thank you for being with me tonight. You have no idea how much this means to me." And it was in that second that the soldiers, the officers, even some of the senior staff realized something. Cha Eunwoo didn't just greet the audience, he greets their hearts. Cheers still echoed even as Eunwoo lowered the microphone from his lips. The small stage that he had stepped on earlier trembled softly by the footsteps of the soldiers who could not contain their enthusiasm. From a distance came the voice of a small nagging logistics officer because the lights were tied. Potluck was almost detached due to the excitement of the atmosphere. But no one cares. All eyes were on one person, Cha Eunwoo. He stood for a few seconds without moving, just letting the atmosphere of the night envelop him. A faint smile lifted on his face, a smile mixed between relief, moved, and a little disbelief that his appearance could make the entire barracks explode like a giant concert. He then bowed once more, this time more slowly, more gratefully. When he stood back up, his gaze swept across the crowd. "Thank you, everyone," he muttered without a microphone, but somehow his voice was still heard by several nearby soldiers. The cheers came back, this time wilder, but the most intense moment began when Eunwoo made a small gesture to the stage attendant, a sign that he was going down. A soldier from the front line immediately shouted, "Hyung, don't come down," made all laugh out loud again. Eunwoo himself covered his face with his hands while laughing shyly, but he kept walking towards the small stairs beside the stage. As he descended the first 2 steps, something unexpected happened. The whole barracks spontaneously began to count down. 10, 9, 8, 7. Eunwoo paused for a moment, looking at them in bewilderment mixed with amusement. He raised his eyebrows as if to say, "Asterisk, what are you doing?" Asterisk, but the soldiers don't care. 6, 5, 4. The mood doesn't make sense anymore. Even a medic who had just arrived because he heard a commotion was immediately carried away and joined the countdown despite not knowing what was going on. 3, 2, and when the number 1 echoing, they all suddenly shouted the big name in one voice, "Hije, Eunwoo." The sound echoed so loudly that the birds sleeping in the trees near the barracks flew into shock. Eunwoo couldn't help but laugh and feel embarrassed. He stood on a ladder for a few seconds, closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. "Have you always been like this?" he said with a laugh. "And it's because of you," said one soldier from behind. Then someone added, "Hyung, if you're not an artist, you must be an official military mood booster." All laughed. Even some high-ranking officers couldn't help but smile at them.